was loaded and can be useful in the event of a claim. In addition to this certificate, many foreign governments, as well as some buyers, require a U.S. phytosanitary certificate for fresh plants and plant products. The phytosanitary certificate states that the shipment has been inspected and is free of harmful pests and plant diseases. Once you have documented that the product is free of harmful pests or disease and in good condition, it's important to take the appropriate steps to ensure that the shipment reaches the destination market in the same condition.
Since the export shipments are not only going to be hauled in a container from here to Oakland, they're also going to ride on board a ship and are going to ride several thousand miles in the open seas on top of a ship that's possibly swaying left and right. We want to make sure that that fruit gets there in condition suitable for the buyer to accept. We have to treat it differently because the in-transit is different. We have to anticipate things like high seas and that type of thing, and extra stress on the box. Therefore, typically, we use the same pallet, but oftentimes we'll use extra strapping. Oftentimes, we'll add corner boards, which will make the boxes stand more erect. We use the padding as an extra padding inside the box.
An export box destined for Taiwan contains more product and weighs more than a domestic pack, so Suma Fruit uses a larger and stronger box designed specifically for Far East markets. When the reefer container arrives at the packing house, the palletized product is loaded and one or more temperature recording devices are attached throughout the container.
It usually has a number, a serial number. It also usually has a tape. And that tape inside actually records the temperature at which that fruit was held. And we will verify that and put that on the inland bill of lading. Once that container is loaded and we've done all we're going to do to it, we want to make sure that no one has tampered with it between here and the dock. So we will take metal seals, put them through a lock in effect on the door, and record those seal numbers.
The seal numbers are verified at the final destination before the container is unloaded.
Be very careful about your terms and how you define who is responsible. At some point in time, ownership has to transfer. And not only does ownership transfer, but the responsibility over the cargo transfers.
According to the Incoterms, if this shipment were sole ex-works named place, in this case, the packing house, with the seller agreeing to load the container, the buyer would bear all the costs and risks involved in moving the product from the packing house to the final destination in Taiwan. This term is sometimes referred to as FOB packing house, or free on board at packing house. The seller determines the ex-works packing house price of the product by adding together a number of costs. First, product cost is determined by multiplying the cost per unit times the number of units, or cost per box of apples times the number of boxes in the shipment. To this number, any of the following costs are added as they apply to the shipment: profit or markup, commissions, banking fees, palletization, freight forwarding and documentation fees, USDA grading and phytosanitary inspection fees, and temperature recorder charges. This total equals the ex-works packing house price.
When the truck arrives at the gate, the booking number, which is of course the bill of lading number, is the instrument that's utilized to identify the entire shipment, the customer, the consignee, the vessel voyage, and the carrying conditions. Other documents such as weigh bills, USDA certificates are collected at that time. For example, apples and pears and plums require a certificate. If that certificate isn't available, the shipment can't move forward by federal law. From that point forward, the trucker is given a parking permit, and the parking sticker shows where the truck and the container should move so that the container can be parked at the reefer pad. While the container is in the reefer pad, it's monitored 24 hours a day for proper temperature management.
Now that the loaded container is at the port, if the product were sold FAS named port of shipment, meaning free alongside ship Oakland, the buyer would assume all responsibility for risk and costs from this point forward. The FAS price quoted by the seller would include the ex-works packing house price plus the cost of inland transportation. If the product were sold FOB port of shipment, meaning free on board Oakland, the responsibility for costs and risks are transferred to the buyer when the container crosses the ship's rail as it is loaded on board the vessel. The FOB price charged by the seller would include the total FAS price plus terminal handling charges. It's not unusual for there to be confusion between buyer and seller over who pays the terminal handling charges. According to the Incoterms, the buyer pays terminal handling charges for an FAS shipment, and the exporter pays these charges for an FOB shipment. To avoid any misunderstanding, you can spell out in the letter of credit who is responsible for paying the terminal handling charges. With a container now stowed on board the vessel, the carrier can prepare the bill of lading.
Since we're holding the commercial invoice, we prepare what's called a bill of lading master. That bill of lading master is used by the carrier to actually prepare an actual bill of lading, which is a negotiable instrument. And actually, that bill of lading specifies during what stages who has title of the goods. So it's very important.
With the vessel now at sea, freight charges are incurred. To quote a price that includes the cost of freight, there are two terms of sale commonly used: cost and freight port of destination, referred to as CFR in the revised Incoterms, or CNF in the old Incoterms. The other term is cost, insurance, and freight port of destination, or CIF. In a CFR quote, the cost of ocean transportation is borne by the seller, but the buyer is responsible for loss or damage to the product during transport. To determine the CFR price quote, the exporter adds to the FOB price the ocean freight charges and any ancillary charges, such as a bunker or fuel adjustment factor and a currency adjustment factor.
CNF leaves out the insurance, often because the company may be shipping within its corporate structure and there's adequate insurance to cover already moves of this nature. CIF, which is cost, insurance, and freight, is a fairly comprehensive way to ship. It gives the shipper the most control over his or her product. And control in international trade is pretty important.
The seller can calculate the CIF price quote by taking the total CFR price and adding the cost of insurance to it. Or in review, the CIF price is determined by totaling all of the costs incurred in the process of exporting the product to the port of destination.
Obviously, if you go CIF, it implies you are paying for insurance, and the buyer is not taking any responsibility for the product until they get it. There is a minimal amount of insurance provided under general insurance provisions in, say, a bill of lading. And in most cases, unless it's very low-rated commodities, it will not come close to recovering the cost of the product. So we strongly urge shippers to have insurance.
We would arrange for the insurance, although freight forwarders can do that as well. Insurance, first of all, you have to have an underwriter who will handle fresh shipments. There are insurance companies who specialize in fresh fruit, and there's people who specialize in other items.
After the shipment is confirmed as being on board and the vessel leaves, the carriers finish up the bill of ladings. Upon receiving the bill of lading from the carrier, we complete our document package for the bank. Some people call that a commercial set. We call it our banking package. And that'll include all of the necessary documents along with a letter of credit to have the bank honor the draft for payment.
The confirming bank, meaning the exporter's bank in the United States, reviews the commercial set. If all the documents are in order, the bank pays the exporter in accordance with the letter of credit.
Our job under the commercial terms is almost limited to the moment the vessel takes off. And at that point, it's really the obligation and responsibility of the buyer and his agent to take care of receiving customs, tariffs, clearance, delivery, and such.
Before the vessel arrives in Taiwan, the confirming bank or exporter's bank sends the approved commercial set with the original documents to the buyer's bank or issuing bank and collects payment from them. Then, in a typical transaction, the issuing bank collects payment from the buyer in exchange for the commercial set, which acts as title to the shipment.
And in that set of document, you have a commercial invoice, you have an original bill of lading, you have the phytosanitary certificate, you have the inspection certificate in there. And with those set documents with the import permit together, present to our customs here, and to require for the release of cargo. Until they satisfy, they won't release cargo to you. So it's very important, what grade you are, how good the credit you have with the customs, with the inspection bureau here.
Taiwan Customs classifies importers into grades, A being the best. Importers with a low grade will have a greater percentage of their containers opened and inspected by customs. Throughout customs inspection and transport to their warehouse, the buyer relies on a customs broker.
After everything released, then they will make arrangement inland trucking to send those containers to the warehouse. And so when this container delivered to the warehouse, usually buyer will be there or buyer representative will be there. And they will open the container, open the seal, open the container, and take a look at the fruit first.
If there is a problem with the product, the first thing the buyer checks is the container's temperature recording device and the recorders inserted in the load by the exporter. With that completed, they notify the exporter that there is a problem.
We will make arrangement for the inspection service to come into the survey report. And in the same time, if steamship carrier, they have a question in their mind, they think there's nothing wrong with their temperature, they can make another inspection bureau come take a look at it.
In the case of this shipment, no claim was necessary. The product arrived in good condition. The buyer was satisfied. The apples were sold in the Taiwan market, and the exporter was paid. And all because everyone involved in the process paid attention to the details.
In the export business, there's so many details that have to be followed up. Not only do you have to pick it right, you have to do every aspect in the whole chain correctly. So I guess the point is that if you decide to be in the export business, you need to take care of every single detail. You can't miss a single step.